because you have to pay bills. Like adulting is adulting; it's not going anywhere, right? But like my number one consideration is going forward is that whatever I do, it has to be something that I'm happy and looking forward to
other
doing.
people or people that you're supposed to vibe with. Like me and you, right? Like the first time I met you and we started communicating, like it wasn't like it was instant fireworks, but I've gotten
No,
to know you better now online than I did even in
I
person.
still don't think we have fireworks, but okay,
We do.
that would be
Because
my
the
baby.
That
truth
would be
is
nice.
this:
We should go
it's
back
funny,
and help
but like
practice.
even if you are saying nonsense, if you can say nonsense with confidence, you will go far. You will
Yep.
go very
Like what you've
far.
been doing.
What did you get up to? What did you get up to this week? Like, what did you guys do?
Nothing important, nothing glorious, nothing sophisticated. Okay, to be fair, I am watching this show on Netflix. It's really good. It's
What is it?
Single Inferno. I actually like it. I like this season more than the previous season.
Single in what?
Singles
Single Inferno.
Inferno.
It's
It's
a
like
Korean
a
show.
dating show,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah, I get
Yes.
one thing about these dating shows is that there's so many differences you can see between all of like depending on where it's being done, right? South America, they have a bit more passion, a bit more spicy with a bit more lies. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
The American one is, are we really here for this or are we here to be social media influencers? That is the, and then the Korean one is like, it's kind of like, it's reading in between the lines, guys. I promise you, that's not the movie smart.
Really?
You gotta be doing a PhD on if these two people are actually interested in each other because it's nuances involved, right? Like
Koreans
it's like
they come across
it's
as
not only
very
Korean.
reserved.
It's not only like the old Asian kind of a thing. Like I think it's a particular part of Asia. Don't let me like lump them all together. I think there are some that are more expressive. There are some that are more culturally, as a whole culture, they are more like. Also, it's age. It's a lot of things that go into it, but like it's the little things that matters most to them, and they notice more. Is the way a little bit of conversation can entirely crumble something you've been building for 3 weeks. Whereas in the UK, in Love Island UK, you can kiss the other person right there for 2 weeks and then
Now
come back and they will still be
Korean
yours.
shows will build up a kiss for the whole season. A kiss. The whole
Like
season
they still
just to build they'll be
I've watched what a kiss. They don't even kiss on Single Inferno. They will go the whole show without kissing. They are picking love interest without kissing. Now you have to search online if they are still interested in each other. Because guess what? There
Why?
was no even
Why are
holding
you
hands
so
is even
stressed?
holding hands is a problem.
Why are
Even
you so
holding hands, yeah,
stressed?
it's a thing. And and they're very pretty. I think that's the thing. I think it's just pretty privilege that we keep coming back.
it's
Anyway, it's a
okay.
very nice show.
It's okay. Sorry.
Yeah, it is
All
what it is.
right,
Sorry,
moving
sorry, sorry,
on.
sorry, sorry, sorry.
Yes, moving on swiftly.
Yeah.
Our topic for the day, we just a continuation from last week. Now that we've talked about why we chose the career that we are, and obviously with the utmost of regret and sadness, and at where we are now in life. Now we
No
are
regrets.
now we are going to talk about if we could go back, right? If we have superpowers, we're going to talk about now, obviously, but now it's not interesting because our motivating factor now is mostly money, but we'll come back to that. But if we could go back to when we were younger, to when we were everything was possible. To when Biola had air, that thing when Biola still had air, when when life was, when it felt like anything was possible.
Okay.
You understand what I'm trying to say?
You've said
When
that
coming
before.
when, when coming to
Ask-
America was still coming to America.
What is the
Do you know
question?
what I'm talking about?
What's
The
the
question
question?
is, what would you change? That is the question. Like if you could go back to when life was still life, when the
Bella,
when the
please. I
Nigerian
think you've tried
currency.
to answer the question, so Ayo can just stop. We've gotten the question.
It's
Thank you.
okay. Because now
All right.
we've there's coming to America. There's
Where are we
Go back
headed?
to when you
Where
see
are
her
we?
hair. Go back to when you
maybe
see a full set of hair. You can start from there for me.
anyway. Okay, so you know what? That's a very tricky question. Thinking about it, right? Like to be honest, because Part of me doesn't regret the fact that I did like engineering,
Mm-hmm.
like, but at the same time, I would have wanted to start like my media thing a lot earlier. So what I would say that I would change is that I would, if again, resources are like scarce, right? But if there was opportunity of doing like a gap here, I would.
Mm.
You lost.
Yeah, I think that's a fair. Yeah,
Calculator.
that's a good answer.
Uh,
I
so what about you, D?
I think I'm very much the same. I mean, thinking back, I feel like in Nigeria, you're very much defined by what you're good at in school. Like if you're good at math and maybe you're good at biology or chemistry, everyone assumes you must become a scientist and you get sorted into classes accordingly. So like when you're
Students.
in JS3, which I think is the equivalent of grade 9, you I think you do like a junior what they call it, like a junior
Yes, yes, yes.
exam,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And after
yeah.
you do that
Junior WAEC,
exam,
yes.
you get sorted into like senior classes where you now take
Science.
only science or you take only humanities or you take only commercial courses. And I feel like that is a bit of a disadvantage. So if I had to go back, I would, and obviously if I had the resources, which I didn't when I was growing up, I would have liked to go to a school where I was exposed to everything else, because getting older and changing my career, like I was good at math, I enjoyed stats, data analysis, and all that. But what I find that I enjoy effortlessly and I'm good at as well is analyzing, strategic thinking, decision making, that those sort of things that you typically have to do in the humanities. And I think that in Nigeria, there was this belief that if you were not in if you were not in the sciences, you were not a critical thinker,
You're not smart.
which I
Yeah,
discovered to be untrue when I studied a
of
humanities
course.
degree. That when you go into the humanities, you actually have to think really critically, because a lot of the things that you're doing will affect people. Whereas in science,
It's
you
not
have to be
straightforward.
safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in science, you have to be safe. Yes, you're building things, and but all those things, they're designed around safety for people eventually at some point. But the point is, it starts with you thinking of safety first. Whereas in the humanities, you're thinking of people first. And I feel like even though I'm
Yeah.
good at both, I really enjoy the humanities side. So yeah, I would have exposed myself more to like courses like economics, because it turned out that I just loved it when I did it. Um, Maybe a little bit of sociology, some psychology. Like I would have loved to expose myself to that, even if I ended up not studying that. That's I think yeah, that would have been my
Okay.
thing.
All right. Firstly, I
And
want to
you,
push back
Ayo?
on what you said.
Hmm.
While I do agree with you that in most areas of engineering or analytical thinking, you do have to be safe. But that is only because of the ideas that you are bringing in are generally so out there. Like when the first person came up with a car, or when the first person came up with electricity, it's thinking outside of the box. No, humanity was there thinking about. You might later come out and be like, maybe we should diverse these particular resources to people, but engineers or scientists have to think outside of the box and think vividly and wildly, be creative with their imagination up to a particular stage. So that's just my only critique of
But
your choice
wait,
that you go back into, because I think
let me
that your choice was
rephrase.
corrupted.
No, let me rephrase that. I'm not saying that engineering does not have critical thinking. I'm saying there's an assumption that humanities doesn't, and it
No, I
Doesn't.
agree
does.
with you. No, I agree
Yeah,
with you. I
so
agree with you.
so like the engineering part of it, when I say that in engineering you have to be safe, it's this sense of like there are already laws and theories that create boundaries around what you can think of, right? Like there are certain laws where for you to sort of upend a law, you have to have created a whole thing that really proves that that law is upended. Like, and that's not a bad thing. In the humanities, those boundaries
It's
are
don't
you
there are no
can
boundaries.
yeah, you
Yeah,
can flirt with
boundaries. No,
There are
I disagree. I
boundaries.
feel
There are
like there are
boundaries,
It's,
but
boundaries.
no,
there are
wait.
boundaries,
It's not.
but some people break the boundaries.
Exactly, you can flirt with them. Like you can't say, for example, that Michaelis Menten model of enzymatic reactions is not real simply because you did three experiments or because you have a critical thought that
Yeah.
challenges it. You have to prove it, which is good. On the other side, you have to think critically and take all the context and data into consideration before
You
you make
know,
a decision,
those
which is
whole
also good.
questions of
All right.
if there's a train and you're driving the train and there's a child and there's an
Yeah, those
adult,
philosophical
you
questions that
get
make
like
you,
where the
yeah.
yeah.
All
So
right.
I'm not
Let
saying
me
either
let
one
me
is better. Wait, sorry, let me finish. I'm not saying one is better than the other. As a matter of fact, I find that having had a science training where there are boundaries around what I'm trying to do, like there are laws and theories that guide what I'm doing, it helps me when I'm thinking in my career, even though I work in an engineering related
Okay.
policy area, it still helps me think properly there. So I don't take things too far because there's a possibility to stretch things on that side. So my point is, when I was younger, I wish I had exposed
Holistic.
myself to the other side because it would have made me more holistic in how I approached problems. Because when you go from science into humanities, it is not the worst, but it is an adjustment. Because when people start talking about things, like I had an introduction to public policy class, and they were talking about ideas, interests, and institutions, and it just seemed like this. Like I ended up just stretching my whole essay to every boundary you could, because I was like, there are no limits. Like when you start dealing with, you're like, oh, there are no limits. But then when my
There are no
supervisor was
limits.
giving me feedback, I started to think that, oh, if I thought of it the way I think of my science stuff, I can use some of that here. Like, yeah, I can stretch things, but I
Except
can also bind them and use those
confine
assumptions to
things.
guide my
all right.
thinking. Yeah, like it's
Let
both
me
sides are
let
great
let
in
me
my
say this then.
opinion.
Actually, and I think this ultimately led you down to where you are today. I actually think you have to mind more. I wouldn't s- more okay. Your mind is more comes more alive in the particular field that you're currently in than in engineering. Because when I think about engineering, when I think about gravity, solely, let's just think about gravity, right? Everything is ruled by gravity. Even
Hmm.
space is ruled by gravity because the gravity of planets, of the sun, and everything interacts up to a particular stage, right?
Yeah, yeah.
When I think about gravity, I think about how beautiful it is. And I think about
Hmm.
like how limiting it is, but because of that limit is why we are here. But also
Yeah.
us breaking that limit allows us to do so many creative things, from flying
Hmm.
balloons to us flying. Like just for me, like engineering
Yeah.
or sciences doesn't limit me. Things I think about it like this is a limit, this is a barrier, right?
Mm.
If I can't even cross it, then that means I have to find a way around it to manipulate it. Let's take the
Mm.
idea of traveling through space, right? There's a limit on how fast you can go,
Hmm.
right? You can't go beyond the speed of
You
light.
can't beat that.
However,
Yeah.
however, now the question is how can you bend space? Because that is essentially what you need to do to beat the speed of
Yeah.
light is you want to bend the fabric of universe, bring once if you are trying to travel, let's say from here to um, billion light years, what you need to do is you need to bend it. It's
Hmm.
almost like a folding space for you to get to where you're going. It still doesn't
Yeah.
mean that by the time you are getting there, the people that you left while you were still here will be alive. However, what
Yeah.
you've done is you've saved yourself about it. That for me is where sciences like and engineering for me just and that is and
So
that's what
that's
I said. That's what I
sorry.
said,
So
right?
what science
Your mind,
has, sorry, Ayo, what science has that you're pointing at, and I think is really valuable, is creativity. You have
yeah.
to be creative in science, but being creative is and being a critical thinker doesn't mean that the other side is not a critical
So it
thinking
doesn't have
aspect.
I
Yeah.
agree, and that is why I
or
said, and that's why I said you might ultimately. I feel like you have your like that thing where something just clicks. Like there's
Mm.
also there are just some people where you just have better interactions with than others, and even you can't even detect why like you just vibe more with somebody than with other people or people that you're supposed
Mm.
to vibe with. Like me and you, right? Like the first time I met you and we started communicating, like it wasn't like it was instant fireworks, but I've gotten
No,
to know you better now online than I did even in
I
person.
still don't think we have fireworks, but okay.
We do. It's okay. It's not your typical fire, but we do. It's not like me and Biola. You can't imitate what we
it's
have.
not
Ours is
it's
magic,
not fireworks, it's not
but it's
fire,
It's
fine.
it's
not
It
fireworks.
knockout,
It's
is.
like
banger, it's
a
banger,
match.
pa pa.
no, it's fireworks, but it's like it might not be you and Biola, but it is our own unique type of a thing. Like if
I
Biola
get
wasn't here,
you.
we will still run our
Of
podcast.
course.
I mean, but you see, that's the thing about it, right? For me, the limitations in science is where the critical thinking comes into play. Whereas for
Yeah.
you guys, it's like the critical thinking comes into play in the limitations with human beings. The idea for me, human beings are like they are the worst and they are the best. When
Mm-hmm.
you go within that range and that boundary, it's now like where you have to come up with your is where you have to fit in your way. And when you think you've seen it all, people will shock you. Like today, I saw something very interesting. A father and a son married a twin.
You all help me do the math on this shit, okay?
Okay.
They're father and son, and they're marrying twins, right? So if that's the father on the left, right?
Right.
If he has a baby with her, then her baby is the brother of the dude on the right, right?
And then when the person that saw the video was trying to map out the family line, and it was like, brother, the minute he started the family line mapping, it was like the father had found the brother to
Father and
somebody,
son
and we
married.
lost it. Like if you see the comment section, it was like,
Yeah.
I am lost. What the hell is going on here? So like
The
for me,
possibilities are
anyway,
endless.
exactly. And I
So
think
don't
and I
mind.
think
It's
that
okay.
is now where people's ultimately that is where like ultimately where people's is the nuances, is that little thing that separates human being from each other. Is that thing of like, is it genetic or is it environmental? But that's a story for another day. For me, let me now answer my own question that I asked you guys. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I will go back to when I was a kid. You guys are
Mm-hmm.
thinking when you were older and you were wise. No, I will go back to when I was a kid because let me tell you something. It's a very simple truth. I still do not know the perfect like. What is something that I like? If I put my hands on it today, is the thing that I was meant to do on this planet, and not like in terms of like my passion and anything like that. I have multiple passions. I have passion for sport, maybe particular parts of sport, but I have passion for research. I do love researching. I love
Same.
finding out new things. So I have passion for a bunch of things, but it's like, does it have to fit into one thing? Does that make sense? Does it have to be
Yeah.
one thing in particular? Does it have to be do I feel like I was deprived? And not deprived as in a bad way. It's like, oh no, they took away my dinner, so now I'm starving. No. It's like was I deprived of the ability? You know that thing where people grew up and today they get today they are scientists for like a whole 6 weeks, and after that they want to be, I
The
don't know,
pilot.
you know the guy that was doing Jungkook, what's his name? The guy that was finding treasures all over the place. Like they could be treasure hunters tomorrow, they could be pirates the next day. You know that thing?
Mm.
I could never go out in my head and be like that. I want to be a pirate. It's not possible. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
Wait.
There's no
Ayo, no offense.
yes.
Which dad is going to be okay now that your son, if your son came to you and said, I want to be a pirate?
No,
Would you
but
be
some
like, yeah,
people
that's
encourage
great?
it. They get them pirates costumes. They play with them to
Ayo.
be pirates. No. You can't be like some people do. You can literally see it. Some people do like even those the idea of what they call it of this thing that happens on the 29th of October or sorry the
Halloween.
last Friday Halloween, right? That is an idea
Yeah.
that just allows creativity in kids. It's like for this year maybe Sonic was your favorite thing. You dress up as Sonic.
Mm-hmm.
Like you tell your
No,
dad you
but
want to dress up
I
as
hear what
Chongo.
you're saying.
They're going to be baptizing you forever. Just
I
tell your dad
hear
you
what
want to
you're saying. And
I
this talks about
but
environment, right? Like how our
yes,
environment has shaped us. The
yeah.
environment
yes.
we grew up
So
in was very it was a
rigid.
command. I think that's how I'll describe it, as a command rigid environment where you
Yeah.
must do what you're told.
Mm-hmm.
Your ability to just explore and ask why wasn't questioned, it was smacked. It was beaten out of you for the most
It
part.
was directly proportional to your likelihood of being a failure in the minds
You
of
know
the
that
parents.
you know that
Yes.
look
Yeah.
that they give you
So
when you ask questions in public that you're not supposed to ask, even when you talk in public when you're not supposed to talk. You know that it's that thing of like you it's that thing of like you didn't even get to develop that aspect of you of like to explore before you even explore. Like you know, now as an adult, now you have to
Yeah.
piece it all together and create some form of like of an idea of or a version of a life that you not only enjoy but also make money from, make a living from, and provide for yourself and your family
But but
from.
but but
So
this is
that is
another thing
why.
that I would like us to sit. Or this is something that I want to say. Sorry for interrupting you, Ayo. Is that
Well,
like
it's the first
there
time.
has to be some sort of balance. There
Why
has to
is
be
so
some sort,
spicy?
because there's a lot to say. There's a lot to say, but I'll just leave you. Let me be the bigger person. Anyway, there's a lot of, but
Wow,
there's
the bigger
balance in
person
the
doesn't
sense that
say
like
that.
you.
Guys, let's focus, please. Thank you.
Anyway, point is this: is that like you, whatever you do decide to choose, there has to be some sort of means of it making you money.
Mm.
But
You
this is
can't be
where I find it
poor or
interesting.
not have resources and like and just be playing around. Like there has to be some sort of balance.
Can I say something?
Brokenness
There
is
are
not good.
two.
Yeah.
Can I say
This is
something? There are
why.
two books. Oh, sorry, Ayo, you go first because I know you were waiting to say.
Thank you. This is where I find it like, because I remember the other day, right? I'm like, let's say, and I think I used this as an example in the previous episode. I was like, let's say you wanted to, you've known from a kid, from a young age, you went to the market and you saw somebody sewing a dress and you saw the finished product, right? And you're like, that's what I want to do. You can make money from that if you were allowed
Yeah.
to do that.
I
So
agree.
that's my point. My point here is ultimately is like, because you are not even allowed to explore your passion, you like, do you know how many people do stupid things? And I'm sorry to say, and by stupid things, I'm not saying like what you are doing is particularly stupid, but like to us or to our fathers or to our parents growing up, that is stupid, right? People are riding bikes like to an extreme extent, and they're making money from it, like serious money. When you ride your bike for too long, your parents will take the bike away from you. Like that does it. Like you get my point. Like the thing is, like my thing is ultimately right. Whatever, if you devote yourself to something enough and you're passionate enough to something, you will find a way to monetize it. Because there's still people monetize talking on the internet for no reason. And I'm talking about the dumbest things on the internet. Like, and like, my thing is like, there's one thing I've come to realize is there's nothing you cannot monetize in this planet. And that is just the sad truth. There's nothing you cannot monetize on this planet. There's three, like, the question is to what extent. But the another question is that if you're not doing something that you love, would you care how much money you make from it? If that
Okay.
stuff makes you happy ultimately. Do you,
Okay.
do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, before we answer that question though, I want to like inject these two books that I read that I think speak to what you're saying. So the first one is called Range by David Epstein. It's a really great book and it's about generalists. And I think at the time I read Range, I had already finished my PhD and I was research lead at my workplace. And I was like, for me, again, I am good at this. So it wasn't stressful for me. I enjoyed it. And I particularly enjoyed the intricacies of science and like the discovery process and all of that. But there was also something in me where I was like, oh, I feel like I could do a lot more with the knowledge that I have. And it's not necessarily
Okay.
about sitting in a lab or having a research output. It's about influencing decision making. Because I think what many people don't know is that science, there's a lot of good science that dies in what they call an innovation valley, right? The valley of death, where the innovation doesn't go from the lab to where it can actually have an impact
To
because all the decision
too
makers
many.
don't know. Yeah, the decision makers don't get it.
In
They don't know
fact,
what to
only one
do.
percent. Only 1%
Yeah, they don't
cross.
know what to do to pull it across that valley. So I started thinking about that. And that was what led me to read Range because he was talking
Okay.
about being a generalist. And one of the examples he gave in the book was that what's this guy's name? I think it's Roger Federer he was speaking about that when he was younger, his parents let him play every sport. I'm not sure if I have the right tennis player, but it's a very popular tennis player. Let him play every
Okay.
sport out there. And there was never a sense of he was going to become a tennis player. It was just be exposed to every and anything. And he ultimately, at an older age, decided he wanted to play tennis. And
Play
but by
tennis.
then, because
Okay.
he had been exposed, he knew what he liked and what he didn't like. So it wasn't that he was bad at anything. He just knew that I enjoy tennis more. And he could say that because he had been exposed. So for us, I think growing up, there was this handicap that we had where we were not, again, because of the school system, exposed to enough things
To
for us to
different
have said,
things.
yeah, it was just that you're good
I
at
like
math
this.
and you're good at physics, so you're going into science class. But the reality is that you could be good at math, physics, and writing, and you could have been allowed to take a creative writing course. And maybe now you would be explaining physics to people who don't understand physics because you can write in a better way that is simpler for the public to understand. But
True.
nobody thought that was a career. And this is what I want to now bring in the second book. In the second book, it's called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. It remains one of my favorite books of all time. In the book, he explains that poor parents tend to focus on the academics of their kids. Rich parents tend to focus on the experiences of their kids. Rich parents will take their kids to museums, cultural events. They will negotiate
Open
with
their
their
mind.
kids. So they don't say to their kid, get out of here right now. No. They're like, do you want to read your book now? Kid is like, no. Well, if you don't read your book, you can't watch TV. Kid is like, but I want to watch TV now. How long do you want? You see, it's a negotiation. The child then grows up with the
That sounds like
confidence
gentle
that they
parent.
there it's not the child grows up with the idea that they can choose their own destiny and they know the consequences
Destiny.
of that choice because they've negotiated and the parents have laid it clearly that this is what will happen if you choose X over Y. So the kids,
But
but
also,
you don't,
I think it's also an empowering type of a thing. Just to,
right?
it allows you to, whenever you walk into a situation, it's never a yes or no situation. It's a thing of like, wherever I find myself, there's a conversation that can be had.
Yeah.
There is a way out where I
Yes.
get what I want, and the other person might ultimately get
It's
what they
not do
want
or
as well.
die.
And you
And
know
never
what
I
it
do that,
also,
yeah,
sorry, you
continue.
know the other skill it gives the kids is that they're never scared of authority,
Yeah,
which any child who grew up
Yes.
in a typical Nigerian household that was just trying to make sure you ended up successful in code, you might have some fear of authority because you had like a very up down, top down situation at home. It was that said, go read your books now. Even if you didn't want to read, you had to go and pretend you were reading. Even, do you get what I mean? So the kids don't,
yes.
True.
they don't
True.
have a fear of authority. They're more confident, and then they're more confident in their choices. And because they've been exposed to so much, it's different. But those are wealthy parents. Whereas when parents are poor, they think of what's going to make you most successful, and the only thing they know is academics. So to take your example, Ayo,
Yeah.
say you were a child and you saw someone sewing a dress in the market and you were like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. I want to do this. Back then, who had respect for tailors? Tailor,
No
being
one.
a tailor was not a respected profession. Do you see?
Yes.
Like there's
Yeah.
so many professions in our environment where we grew up that were not respected. So to be fair to our parents, they just didn't want you to not have a good life in
Oh
their
no, I'm
heads.
not. Yeah, I'm not
Right. No, I'm
disputing
not saying
that.
you're criticizing them. I'm just saying, like, in
Yeah,
their minds, there were these limitations as to what was possible if you pursued that path. Whereas
yeah.
they knew for sure that if you were educated in a specific way, you went to high school, went to uni, graduated,
Studying
and then they came
specific
to the
things, you
studying
would be set
specific
for life.
yeah. So I think
Yeah.
there's so many factors at play, and those books really highlighted it for me. And that was why, like, I'd done a PhD, and I was like, I'm going back to school.
So essentially, what you're saying is you just read more. But
Yeah,
it's so sad.
you should all read more.
Yeah, but hopefully that will not be. Hopefully, what we do, me and Biola, is that we let you read, and then you can download it onto us, and I feel like that would be a nice partnership. Uh, and we can download it onto you guys that are also watching but will not read. Yeah, you guys like this. Now that we are here in the 21st century and we are in 2025, and let's say you want to change, right? I think Dami has been through the most change. Viola is obviously leading. Viola is also going through. Viola has also gone through a change career-wise, but or more like found himself in another career, but still has huge appreciation for his career. that means like fuck my career, but I can use what I learned from it. Sorry about the language. And then I am like, I am like, I don't even know. So, you see, you have all spectrums here. Isn't that beautiful, guys? So now, let's say you want to change today. Or let's say that now that you find yourself here, what would you change going forward, ultimately? And not only that, what do you think would be the biggest thing that you have to take into consideration? Would it be financially? Would it be family? Would it be where you want to be? Not necessarily what you want to do, but where you can do what you want to do, if that makes sense. Because some people might have to move soon with the tariffs that are coming from the US. Please, step in.
To answer your question, I think honestly, my number one factor now is happiness. Like, how happy am I in the role? Like, I don't
Yes,
want to
money
be
is
doing
talking.
something that I wake up on a Monday. No, money is there, but like, I'll get there. I don't want to be doing something that I wake up on a Monday morning and I'm like, oh God, I'm doing this again. Like, I don't want that for myself, and I don't think anybody should even want that. That's something that I wish everybody. It's just unfortunately the world doesn't work that way. But like, that is like my number one factor. I don't want to be doing something that I'm depressed at the beginning of the week. I want to do something that I'm happy with. And I have come to realize that, and you said it earlier, that like, if you are really, the way the world is now, if you're really good at something, right? Well, there are other things involved, but if you're really good at something and you can market yourself, there are people who will pay you for it.
Yes.
So making money is important, and learning the art of making money is very important.
It's
That you can
obviously.
be skilled. If you don't have that thing, you won't make money. So you have to, because you have to pay bills. Like, adulting is adulting. It's not going anywhere, right? But like, my number one consideration is going forward is that whatever I do, it has to be something that I'm happy and looking forward to doing. So yeah.
What about you, D?
I think so. For me, I've already changed my career, but even though I'm working in an
Multiple times, of
engineering
course.
related,
Of course.
not multiple times. I've only had two careers, but okay. Even though I'm working in an
Multiple.
engineering
Two is two.
related
Two is, I mean, is
related
it too
field,
multiple?
no. Even though I'm working in an engineering, I changed
Uh-uh.
my career. But here's the thing, and when I tell people I changed my career and I changed from engineering, I've had this. A lot of people assume it was because I was not successful in engineering. And I often have to tell them it
Who are
had
you telling,
nothing.
though? Who are you telling these things to? I mean, sorry, not who. Who are assuming these things? I think that part, who are these people that are assuming? I think it's very, very interesting. I think it's mostly Nigerians, but go ahead.
Yes, it is actually. I wasn't going to say that, but it is. A lot of Nigerian guys assume that I was failing at engineering, which was not
That's
the
why you
case at
switched.
all. And I had to tell someone one day that actually the day I decided, like around the time, not necessarily the day I decided to change my career, I had been invited to apply for a professor position in another country based on my publications. They didn't, and I had applied to that place before for a lower position, and they had written back to me say you are too qualified for this. So when the new one opened up, they wrote to me to invite me to apply, and I said no. So
Ah,
I wasn't
look
failing.
at you, just turning
No,
down people. Must
I
have felt
wasn't
nice, eh?
failing. No, it wasn't even about that. I had come to a critical point, and that's what Biola was referring to, where I was asking myself if this was the limit. Like, is this it? You know, when you get to a point in your life where you're like, oh, I have everything I want. And then you start asking, is this it? That was where I was. I had done everything that anyone would want to do. Like, you know my story, right? Like 3 minute thesis competition, first one in UJ, I won. I went on to I got an award, an international award for my science. Like I had done everything. So there was no reason for me to be unhappy. I was okay. And I was getting paid. I wasn't unemployed. There were a lot of people around me who were like, we studied the same thing. We can't get any offers. I was okay. But I had come to a point where
Getting
I was
paid.
like, is this it?
Ah,
And I
she said
realized
it all.
there and then that for me, that wasn't it. There
It
was
wasn't.
there was something else in me that I could still stretch out and use what I had learned elsewhere. So I got
Can I
to a
ask,
point where, yeah.
that's something in you? Is it necessarily a thing of like you felt there was more in you, or you felt what you were doing wasn't what you ultimately want to be doing, let's say 10, 20 years down the line. Because those are two different things. It's a thing of
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
happiness
true,
versus
true.
more I could, because you could still do more in the engineering field. Why ultimately you might not be doing, you might be doing it more from an higher position, or you have the ability to select what you want to do. You get my point, right? Whereas when you're
I,
coming up, you still have to report to somebody, but as a professor, you have to pick what you want to do, right? I
yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
Whereas now
So
it's a
for
situation of
The
me,
like,
higher you go,
I'm
so was it
unhappy
a
with
case of
this, or
independence
this,
in the field,
yeah,
or yeah?
it was a
it
more of
was
a
so
situation of like something was
I would
missing.
say,
Sorry.
yeah, I felt like something was missing. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'll be honest and say that. I didn't have a thing of, oh, this is what I'm going to become. But I had a thing of, I'm good at this thing, but I come home empty every day. And it's a weird feeling. Like, I feel like there's a part of me that's being neglected, if that makes sense. Like my
Okay.
best skills are being neglected. So I had to go on like a deep reflection. And I'll just share this one bit with you guys. When I finished my first master's in environmental engineering, I was selected by one of the big banks in South Africa to attend a women's conference. And it was all women who were finishing their master's degrees and could potentially work in the bank. Yeah. So we go there, we have to take a career, like it wasn't a career, it was like an aptitude test. And it looked really silly. It was just like, yeah, take this test, blah, blah, blah. It was a paid for test, but they paid for everything. They put us in the Radisson Blue in Stanton. This was a big
Okay,
thing. They even
that
had
part was not
a
necessary, but
a
sure.
stylist come speak to us. So, like,
Oh,
no, the point I'm trying to make is that they
It
saw a
was
lot of
holistic.
potential in
Yeah.
us. Yeah, and they were trying to prep us for big careers. So they also invited a career coach. And this test, this person would coach you based on the results of your test. And the test told you your
Okay.
top five strengths, right? And my top five were strategic, maximizer, futuristic, communication, and relative. I still remember the list because when it was, I think it was like, let me see, 7 years later, or no, 6 years later, when I was changing my career, that was the test that saved me. So I do my test and I'm like, okay, cool. Then we go into the room, we're put in groups, blah, blah, blah. This man starts talking. Then we had one-on-one sessions with him. So I walk in, he looks at my top five, asks me what I do. I said, oh, I'm in engineering. I've just finished my master's with distinction. He looked at me and he said, darling, you're not going to be happy in engineering. And I remember in that moment, I was like, this man is an idiot because I
It's
already got my
crazy.
results
Yeah.
that I was finishing with a distinction. So in my head, again, it was the sense of I'm good at this. So why would I be unhappy? When I was going to change
He
my
didn't say you
career,
won't be successful in it. That's
he
the
didn't say
thing.
that. He said you will
Yeah.
not be happy.
Yeah.
So I
Be
could I
happy.
would be successful, but you will not be happy based on the strengths that you have. And I realized later on that he was right. That when I started to get older, think of a strategic person. That's vision setting, right? Leading. Before you get there in engineering, it's a really long time.
Nah,
yes.
It means you
you'll be in
give
your
up
60s.
you
You'll be
give
in
up
your 60s.
years
That's
for
the
you to
truth.
get there by the time you're older when you can finally be happy, and by then you might have lost interest. That was what ultimately tipped me over, going on that reflection and realizing what I was good at. And that allowed me put my application together to go back to school because I now knew for sure that those things were the things I was really good at, that I could learn about any and everything because I am good at
Uh-huh.
learning. But the point is, how do I use the thing? And yes, I could use it in one field, but impact is also important
But
to me because remember, one strength was maximizer. So when you give me something, I'm thinking, how do I make this thing bigger
make
and
it
see
big.
the impact
Hmm.
immediately?
You
That
know what
was
this
me.
story reminds me of?
So I think
Reminds me of you. They were, remember those servants that were giving money in the Bible? I mean, it's like if it was me, I would have bought a castle with the money that they gave me. Maximize the hell out of that coin. Anyways.
Why?
no, but
Why
I
are
think
you like
what I
this?
pull out from what I pull out from what Demi has said is that like it is very important for that career talk to speak with a career um, expert where they basically analyze your strengths and then they at least give you these are the 1, 2, 3, 4 things, 5 things that you should probably look into. Not things you perceive to be, or what your environment has made you think this is what is important. But like you as a person, you as an individual, that'll probably be something that like maybe like grade 11, grade 12, you should probably start exposing
You know
your.
what's funny
It
about
would have
that?
been nice if we
You know
were
what's
all exposed to that.
So let's say ultimately, like now I'm thinking of if I'm building a school. If I'm building a school, what elements are unconventional that must go into my school?
Yeah.
Because let's say I'm building a school in Nigeria, which we've all established. As much as we have all grown up, I still feel like the culture in Nigeria hasn't ultimately changed too much. I think I'm not saying that people cannot now dive into. I think there's more options ultimately for you to go, but it doesn't mean that it has. Let's say it was three before. We said engineering, law, and doctor. Now it has become maybe seven at max. Even seven might be
Mm-hmm.
pushing it. You get my point, right? So the question is, how do you? Let's say you are building a school. Now ultimately we are all building a school right from scratch. And I'm talking about primary to high school. That's where we're going to stop. University, I feel like in university you kind of set and
You can't.
push
You
out the
have
door.
to. Yeah.
What unconventional things would you add to your high school? Firstly, how would implement have multiple teachers teaching different
Yeah.
subjects? Teach your strength, my nigga. Sorry about the
That
story.
was
Teach your
that
strength.
was my that was my experience though in
It's
high
okay, you're
school.
bougie. You're half bougie. You're like not fully bougie, you're
No,
half
I
bougie.
went to a government school.
Yes, which was half bougie. And
So
which state were you in?
in Lagos.
Okay, half bougie. Nonsense.
It's not.
I did not go to a state in. I did not go to a government. I went to a government school too. It wasn't in Lagos. Homeroom. You barely had people that were transition that were switching. All right, you had one person teaching you subjects up to like a particular class, and then you started switching. Anyways, what about you, B? What would you add
To your
of the school?
school.
Yes, to
Um.
my school, something unconventional
To
that
this
you
your
add to my
school.
school.
Well, growing up, sport that the whole avenue of sports, using sports to pay for your fees, it didn't exist. And I don't know if it still exists. Even I don't know if it exists now. But that's something that if I could do that, like knowing me, right, I probably would have if I had that option, if that option was there, I'd have definitely taken it. Like it would have
Alright,
been
alright.
I would have found one spot that would have paid for my university fees easily.
Alright. Not
Easily.
university.
But
Oh,
that
I
option
said I
wasn't there.
this. People are clearly not listening. I said
You
primary
no,
to high school,
you're not
not university.
listening to me. I'm saying that by the like I would have built myself so much that it will pay for my
Oh,
university fees even.
So
That's what
what
I'm
you're saying
saying.
is like
But that
your
option
reputation would have
that option
enabled
wasn't
your
there.
university to, yeah. But also,
Yes.
do we have schools that are paying for eyes for talent and for artists in Nigeria?
There's
Universities
it's
that are
not
paying.
there. It's not there. It's not there. It's
But
not
at
there.
least you could
So
have
that's
used
what
it to
I'm saying.
travel
That's
abroad.
something that I
I'm
would
sure that there will be a white university
yes.
that would have launched you
Yes.
at
There will be exactly. So what I
yes.
would say there will be like affiliations of that school to
Yeah.
um universities outside to come and pick up talent. If you're
Yeah.
good in a
Okay.
certain
That's a
in
nice one.
sports,
That's a
then
nice one.
yeah.
That's a nice one. So what about you, B? What would be something that you will add?
I think for me, it would be important for everyone who graduated from that school to be really good at communicating their ideas. Because
Ooh.
I find that a lot of people I meet are brilliant, but they can't sell themselves and they can't tell people what they're thinking in a way that people get. So it's
Absolutely.
like, when you're dealing with that very nerdy teacher who uses all the big words and all the jargon and stuff, but when you put that person in front of, say, an investor, they can't speak in a way that investor will understand. So for me, I would
The jargon
say
is jargoning.
writing, yeah, like writing and public speaking, such that when you pick up a piece of writing from any one of my students, you are immediately roped into that writing because you're like, wow. Or if they stand before you to speak, you listen for the duration of their talk. You don't drift away, they don't blab around, they deliver. I think for me, that's an important skill that the Nigerian education system does not prioritize in
True.
any way. And when you are good at it as a kid, even some teachers get jealous of you in a way because
Mm.
they're like, you're trying to take the shine away. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And some of them admire you and support you, but there are those who are like, oh, who does it? So
Who are you
I
talking
would
to?
make that
Yeah.
I would make that a thing, like where the
Okay.
kids are authoritative
Yeah.
in their speaking manner, they're respectful, they deliver ideas really well, and they write excellently. That would be
Because
my
the
baby.
That
truth
would be
is
nice.
this,
We should go
it's
back
funny,
and
but
help
like
practice.
even if you are saying nonsense, if you can say nonsense with confidence, you will go far.
Mhm.
You will
Yep.
go very
Like what you've
far.
been doing throughout this one. Anyways, jokes. For me, like I said, I think I would like the idea of people that are not necessarily teachers, but have, I want to say, vaguely defined roles. And by this I mean, like, you see how there's a counselor, but there's a career day counselor. I want to have almost an activity counselor, if that makes sense. I want to be able to expose my students to a lot of things. I want people that are creative in that sense. Like, want to be. I was lucky enough to go on a I think it was like a museum or whatever tour. I think, but by that time I was already in high school, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I never visited so many places around my hometown of cultural relevance, or it's just that idea of, like, like, we did some agricultural things in my school, but it was also the place where we play football. So I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
much stuff was actually grew. But the idea behind it is that, and now thinking about it, those little things, those two things or three things that I with me ultimately till when I am now. Whereas most of the things that I did in classrooms are just like days just repeating themselves and gone from my memories, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
if you can supply people with so many experiences and expose them to so many things, not only are you creating a better universe for yourself and a better world for yourself, you're also creating, and that now enhance the strength of your country,
Mm.
because there's so much beauty when you look outside of Africa, right? Or when you look within Africa, ultimately, when you look outside and then you now look within, you will realize that some of our biggest issues are, we have so much as a group, but it is so limited, and there's just no avenue for those people or those things to shine through.
Mm.
And and I think that is a direct repercussion of, ultimately, obviously, it's one of the things of growing up poor, which already creates its own limitations and barriers on
Yeah.
things, but also its exposure.